They say that in Harlem, you can buy anything for the right price, but I never thought that price would be applied to my own soul. My name is Julian, but back then, everyone just called me Jules. I wasn't just a soldier in Bumpy Johnson's army. I was his shadow. I was the man who sat at his dinner table, the man who knew how he liked his coffee, and the man who held his coat when the weather turned cold. We weren't just partners in the numbers game. We were brothers. Or so I told myself every night before the greed started to rot me from the inside out. The betrayal didn't happen all at once. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow leak. It started with a gambling debt to the wrong people in New Jersey. $50,000. Today, that's a nice car. In 1965, that was a mountain of gold. I was drowning, and the Italians knew it. They smelled the desperation on me like cheap gin. They approached me in a dark corner of a social club on 116th Street. They didn't threaten me. That was the scary part. They were polite. They offered me a hand. $50,000, Julian, the man said. His name was Genovese, a snake in a silk suit. That's all it takes to make your problems disappear. Just tell us where Bumpy is going to be on Thursday night. No guards, no witnesses, just the location. I remember looking at my hands and seeing them shake. I thought about Bumpy. I thought about the time he paid for my mother's surgery. I thought about the time he pulled me out of a burning building in Queens. And then I thought about the sound of my own knees breaking if I didn't pay the Italians. The fear won. It always does when you're a coward. I took the money. $50,000 in a brown paper bag that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The plan was set for Thursday. Bumpy was supposed to meet a contact at a secluded brownstone near Morningside Park. It was a private matter, or so I told him. I told him I had a lead on a corrupt city official who wanted to jump ship. Bumpy trusted me. He didn't even check the address. He just nodded and said, "Lead the way, Jules." As we drove toward the park, the silence in the car was deafening. I felt like the air was being sucked out of the vehicle. Every time Bumpy looked at me, I felt like he was reading my thoughts, seeing the brown paper bag hidden under my seat. He started talking about the future. He talked about retiring, about moving to a place where the air didn't smell like exhaust and blood. He talked about me taking over some of the legitimate businesses. He was building a future for me while I was driving him to his grave. We arrived at the brownstone. The streetlights were flickering, casting long, jagged shadows against the brick walls. The park across the street looked like a dark ocean waiting to swallow us whole. My heart was beating so fast, I could feel it in my teeth. "Go on in, Jules," Bumpy said, checking his pocket watch. "I'll be right behind you. I just need to finish this cigar." I stepped out of the car. My legs felt like they were made of water. I walked up the stone steps of the brownstone, my hand trembling as I reached for the door handle. I knew that behind the curtains of the second floor, two Lucchese hitmen were waiting with suppressed rifles. All I had to do was walk in, and the trap would snap shut. I opened the door and stepped into the pitch-black foyer. I heard the faint click of a safety being disengaged. I closed my eyes, waiting for the sound of the car door closing outside, waiting for the sound of the man I loved like a father being torn apart by a lead. But the car door never closed. Instead, I heard the engine of the Cadillac roar to life. I spun around, looking through the glass of the front door. The car wasn't leaving. It was idling. And there, standing in the middle of the sidewalk, was Bumpy. He wasn't looking at the brownstone. He was looking at me. The hitmen upstairs realized something was wrong. They didn't wait. They opened fire through the windows, but they weren't aiming at Bumpy. They were aiming at the car. The street erupted in glass and sparks. I dove for the floor, screaming. I thought I was dead. I thought the Italians had decided to take me out too, to save themselves the $50,000. I crawled toward the back of the house, looking for a way out, my mind screaming with the realization that I had destroyed everything for a bag of paper. I made it to the kitchen and burst through the back door into the narrow alleyway. I ran until my lungs burned, until the sound of the gunfire was just a dull echo in the distance. I didn't stop until I reached a small, rundown hotel on the edge of the city. I locked myself in a room and threw the bag of money on the bed. I sat there for hours, staring at the cash. It looked dirty. It looked like blood. I waited for the news. I waited for the word to spread that Bumpy Johnson was dead. I imagined the chaos in Harlem, the power vacuum, the streets running red. I told myself I was a survivor. I told myself I did what I had to do. But as the sun began to rise, I heard a sound that made my blood turn to ice. It wasn't a siren. It wasn't a shout. It was the sound of a key turning in my hotel room door. I scrambled for my gun, but I had left it in the car. I backed into the corner, watching the handle turn slowly, deliberately. The door swung open. There was no one there, just the empty hallway. I walked toward the door, my heart in my throat. I looked out into the hall, but it was vacant. I turned back toward the bed to grab the money and run. But the money was gone. In its place, sitting on the edge of the mattress, was a single, half-smoked cigar. It was still warm. A thin trail of blue smoke curled into the air, smelling of expensive tobacco and the cold, hard streets of Harlem. I felt a shadow move behind me. A hand, heavy and familiar, landed on my shoulder. "You forgot your change, Jules," a voice whispered. It was Bumpy. He wasn't at the brownstone. He wasn't in the car. He was right behind me, and he had been there the whole time. The realization hit me harder than any bullet. He knew. He had known since the moment I took the meeting in the social club. He had let me drive him to the park just to see if I would actually go through with it. I didn't know yet that the $50,000 was only the beginning of my punishment. The worst was that he wasn't going to kill me. Not yet. He leaned in close, the smell of the cigar overpowering, and I realized that death would have been a mercy compared to what he had planned for the man who sold his brotherhood for 50 grand. I stood there, frozen, the warmth of the cigar smoke curling around my neck like a noose. Bumpy's hand was heavy on my shoulder, not squeezing, just resting there. It was the weight of judgment. It was the weight of 20 years of friendship that I had sold for a stack of green paper. I wanted him to hit me. I wanted him to pistol whip me, to scream, to put a bullet in the base of my skull. Physical pain I could handle. I had been cut, shot, and beaten in the back alleys of Harlem since I was 12 years old. But this silence was peeling the skin off my soul. "Turn around, Jules," he whispered. I forced my body to move. It felt like turning a rusted cog. I faced him. Bumpy Johnson was sitting on the edge of the cheap hotel bed, his legs crossed, his suit impeccable despite the chaos of the night. He looked out of place in that dirty room with peeling wallpaper and the smell of mildew. He looked like a king visiting a dungeon. He didn't look angry. That was the worst part. His face was a mask of weary sadness. He looked at me the way you look at a dog that has bitten you. Not with hate, but with the realization that the animal has to be put down. "Did you count it?" he asked, nodding toward the bag on the bed. I couldn't speak. My throat was closed up with fear. I shook my head. "Open it," he commanded. Softly, gently. I reached for the bag. My hand was shaking so bad I could barely grip the paper. I tore the top open. Inside were stacks of bills, bound tight. I pulled one out. The top bill was $100. Benjamin Franklin stared back at me, judging me. But when I flipped through the stack, my heart stopped. Underneath the first bill, it was just paper. Newsprint, cut to size. I frantically grabbed the next stack. Paper. And the next. Paper. It was all fake. The $50,000, my price, my salvation, my Judas Silver, was nothing but trash. "You think Genovese respects you?" Bumpy asked, lighting his cigar again. "You think the Italians pay full price for a traitor? They played you, Jules. They knew you wouldn't check the bag until the job was done. And they knew that by the time you realized it was paper, you would already be dead." I dropped the bundle to the floor. It scattered like dry leaves. "They weren't just going to kill me at the brownstone," Bumpy continued, watching the smoke rise. "They had a car waiting for you 2 blocks over. A cleanup crew. As soon as you walked out of that house thinking you were rich, they were going to put 2 in your chest and take the bag back. You sold me out for a promise, Jules. You sold me out for air." I fell to my knees. The reality of it crashed down on me. I wasn't just a traitor. I was a fool. I had thrown away the only loyalty that mattered for a lie. "Kill me," I whispered. "Just do it, Bumpy. Please." Bumpy laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "Kill you? No, that's too easy. Death is sleep, Jules. And you don't deserve to sleep. Not yet." He stood up and walked over to the window, pulling back the dirty curtain to look at the street below. "I knew about the debt 3 weeks ago," he said, his back to me. "I paid it off." My head snapped up. "What?" I sent a runner to Jersey. I paid your 50,000. You didn't owe them a dime when you walked into that meeting. I wanted to see if you would come to me. I wanted to see if you would trust me enough to say, Bumpy, I'm in trouble. But you didn't. You went to them. You chose the easy way out. Tears blur my vision. He had saved me before I even betrayed him, and I still held the knife. So what happens now? I asked, my voice trembling. Bumpy turned around. His eyes were hard now. The sadness was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating look of the Godfather. Now, you work for me, but not as my brother. You're not family anymore, Jules. You're a tool. You're a weapon. And I'm going to point you at the people who tried to buy you. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, heavy object. It wasn't a gun. It was a wire recorder, the kind the feds used. You're going back to Genovese, Bumpy said. No, Igaspat. They'll kill me. They know I failed. They don't know anything, Bumpy corrected. The hitmen at the brownstone are dead. My men took care of them before they could make a call. As far as Genovese knows, the job is done. You're going to walk into his club. You're going to tell him I'm dead. You're going to demand the rest of your money. And you're going to get him to admit that he ordered the hit on tape. It was a suicide mission. Walking into the lion's den with a lie on my lips and a wire on my chest. If they suspected anything, if I sweated too much, if my voice cracked, if they checked the news, I would be skinned alive. I can't do it, Bumpy, I pleaded. I can't lie to them. They smell fear. You lied to me for 3 weeks, Bumpy said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You looked me in the eye and ate my food while you planned my death. You're a fantastic liar, Jules. Now, use that talent to save your life. Because if you don't walk into that club, I'll give you to the cleanup crew myself. He tossed the wire recorder onto the bed next to the piles of worthless paper. Get dressed, he said. We have an appointment with the devil. The drive back to the city was a blur of neon lights and terror. I was wearing the wire taped to my chest. It felt cold and hard against my skin, a constant reminder of my fragility. Bumpy drove. He didn't speak. He just listened to the jazz on the radio, tapping his fingers on the steering wheel as if he wasn't driving a dead man to his funeral. We pulled up a block away from the Italian social club. It was a fortress. Dark windows, heavy oak doors, men in suits standing out front smoking cigarettes. This was the heart of the enemy territory. Bumpy turned off the engine. He didn't look at me. If you make it out, he said, don't come back to Harlem. I don't ever want to see your face again. You take whatever money they give you and you run. If I see you on 125th Street, I won't hesitate. I nodded. I reached for the door handle. Jules, Bumpy said. I paused. Make sure you get the voice. I need Genovese's voice on that tape. Without it, you're useless. I stepped out into the cold night air. My legs felt heavy, but a strange calm washed over me. I was already dead. Bumpy was right. The Jules who was his friend died the moment I took that bag. The man walking toward the club was just a ghost. I walked up to the bouncers. They recognized me. They sneered. The boss is expecting you? One of them asked. I nodded. Tell him the job is done. The king is dead. They patted me down. My heart stopped as their hands brushed over my chest. But the wire was taped low, right under the rib cage, and the thick wool coat hid the bulk. They didn't find it. He's in the back. The bouncer grunted, opening the door. The club smelled of garlic, wine, and expensive cigars. The air was thick with smoke. I walked past tables of men playing cards. Men who would kill me without blinking if they knew what I was carrying. I kept my eyes forward. I focused on the lie. I reached the back office. The door was open. Genovese was sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, counting money. Real money. He looked up when I entered. He didn't smile. You're late, he said. I had to make sure, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I had to wait for the body to get cold. Genovese stopped counting. He leaned back in his chair. So, is it done? Bumpy Johnson is history, I lied. I put 2 in his head myself. The room went silent. Genovese stared at me. He was looking for the lie. He was looking for the twitch in my eye. I held his gaze. I thought about the fake money in the hotel room. I thought about Bumpy's hand on my shoulder. I let the hate fuel me. Genovese slowly smiled. A predator smile. You did good, kid. You did real good. Harlem is open for business. Where's my money? I asked. The rest of it. Genovese laughed. He stood up and walked around the desk. He put his arm around my shoulder. It felt just like Bumpy's hand, but colder. You're a greedy one, aren't you? 50,000 wasn't enough? You promised 100, I said. And the first 50 was mostly paper. I checked. Genovese's smile faltered. He stepped back. You checked the bag? I'm not an idiot, I said. I want what I'm owed. Genovese looked at me for a long time. Then he nodded to one of his men standing in the corner. Give the kid his money. The man opened a safe and pulled out a stack of cash. He tossed it on the desk. Take it, Genovese said. You earned it. You killed the unkillable man. I reached for the money. My hand touched the bills. But then, the phone on Genovese's desk rang. It was a loud, jarring sound in the quiet room. Genovese held up a hand. He picked up the receiver. Yeah, he said. I watched his face. I saw the color drain from his cheeks. I saw his eyes widen. I saw the look of a man who realizes the trap has snapped shut on his own leg. He slowly hung up the phone. He looked at me. The smile was gone. The predator was back, but this time he was scared. And a scare predator is the most dangerous thing in the world. That was the precinct, Genovese whispered. They just found a body in Morningside Park. I held my breath. But it wasn't Bumpy Johnson, he said, his hand moving toward the drawer where I knew he kept his gun. It was two of my men. I froze. He knows, Genovese roared, pulling the gun. He knows. I didn't think. I flipped the desk. The heavy mahogany crashed into Genovese, knocking him backward just as his gun went off. The bullet shattered a mirror behind me. I scrambled for the door. Kill him. Genovese screamed. Kill the rat. I burst into the main club area. Every head turned. Every hand went for a jacket pocket. I was one man in a room full of wolves, and the exit was a mile away. I dove behind the bar as the room erupted in gunfire. Bottles shattered above my head, raining whiskey and glass down on me. I was trapped. I had the tape. I had the confession. But I wasn't going to live to deliver it. I pulled my own gun, a small .38 I had hidden in my ankle holster, the one the bouncers missed. 6 shots. 20 guys. I looked at the back door. It was locked. This is it, I thought. I am sorry, Bumpy. But then, the front of the club exploded. Not with gunfire, but with a truck. A massive delivery truck rammed through the front doors, smashing the bouncers and the tables aside. The windshield was shattered, and behind the wheel, his face grim and determined, was the last person I expected to see. It wasn't Bumpy. It was the one man Bumpy trusted more than me. A man I thought hated my guts. A man named Pettigrew. Get in. He screamed over the roar of the engine and the gunfire. I sprinted toward the truck, bullets kicking up splinters of wood around my feet. I dove into the passenger seat just as Pettigrew threw the truck into reverse. We tore out of the club, dragging the door frame with us, spinning into the street. I looked back. The Italians were pouring out onto the sidewalk, firing wildly. Did you get it? Pettigrew yelled, wrestling the steering wheel. I tapped my chest. I got it. Good, he grunted. Because Bumpy just declared war. And you're the first casualty if you lose that tape. I slumped back in the seat, bleeding from a cut on my forehead. I was alive. But as we sped toward Harlem, I realized something. Bumpy hadn't sent Pettigrew to save me. He sent him to save the tape. If I had died in there, Pettigrew would have cut the wire off my corpse and left me for the rats. I was alone, truly alone, and the war was just beginning. But I didn't know that the voice on the tape wasn't the only thing recorded. And what was captured in the background of that conversation would change everything Bumpy thought he knew about his empire. The delivery truck rattled over the cobblestones of Lenox Avenue like a dying beast. My head was pounding, the blood from the cut on my forehead drying into a sticky mask. Beside me, Pettigrew drove with a stone-faced intensity, his knuckles white on the wheel. He hadn't said a word since we left the club, since the gunfire faded into the distance. The silence was worse than the screaming. It gave me time to think. It gave me time to replay the sound of Genovese's voice, the explosion of glass, and the look in Bumpy's eyes when he handed me the wire. We didn't go to the townhouse. We didn't go to the penthouse. Pettigrew drove us deep into the heart of Harlem, to a place I hadn't visited in years. The basement of an old funeral home on 135th Street. It was a fitting place for a meeting between ghosts. Get out, Pettigrew growled as he killed the engine. I stumbled out of the truck, clutching the wire recorder against my chest like a shield. The air smelled of formaldehyde and rain. We walked down the narrow concrete steps, Pettigrew pushing me forward whenever I slowed down. At the bottom of the stairs, a heavy steel door stood waiting. Pettigrew knocked, a rhythmic, coded tap. The door swung open. The room inside was dim, lit only by a single hanging bulb that swayed gently, casting moving shadows against the brick walls. In the center of the room sat a card table, and behind it sat Bumpy Johnson. He looked different. The impeccable suit was still there, but his tie was loosened, and a glass of dark amber liquid sat untouched before him. He was cleaning a pistol, slowly, methodically, taking it apart and putting it back together, his eyes focused on the mechanism as if the secrets of the universe were hidden in the springs and oil. He didn't look up when we entered. Did he sing? Bumpy asked, his voice low and vibrating off the damp walls. He sang, Pettigrew answered, closing the door and locking it behind us. We got the tape. We got the war. Bumpy finally looked up. His eyes landed on me. There was no warmth left. No anger either. Just a vast, frozen indifference. Put on the table, Jules. I walked forward, my legs trembling. I placed the small wire recorder on the green felt of the card table. It looked like a toy, a small mechanical thing that had cost me my life. Play it. I pressed the button. The spools began to turn with a faint whirring sound. For a moment, there was only static, the sound of my own clothes rustling against the microphone, the thumping of my heart. Then, the voices cut through the room. You're late. That was Genovese. I had to make sure. I had to wait for the body to get cold. That was me, lying. Bumpy listened, his face unreadable. He listened to me demand the money. He listened to Genovese laugh. He listened to the confession. You did good, kid. Harlem is open for business. When the recording reached the point where the phone rang, the moment the trap was sprung, Bumpy held up a hand. Stop, he commanded. I hit the stop button. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. You got what you wanted, Bumpy, I said, my voice cracking. He admitted it. He ordered the hit. You can take this to the commission. You can start the war with clean hands. Bumpy looked at the recorder, then at me. You think that's what I was looking for, Jules? You think I needed a tape to know Genovese wanted me dead? I've known that for 10 years. I frowned, confused. Then why? Why did you send me in there? Why risk everything? Bumpy reached out and rewound the tape. Not to the beginning, but to a specific spot. A moment I hadn't paid attention to. It was right when I walked into Genovese's office. Before I spoke, listen, Bumpy said. Closely. I leaned in. The static hissed. And then, faintly, in the background, buried under the sound of Genovese counting money, there was another voice. A voice coming from the shadows of the office. A voice I had been too terrified to notice at the time. Don't worry about the police, Sal. I pulled the patrol cars from the district until midnight. You have a clear window. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. Every hustler, every number runner, every pimp in Harlem knew that voice. It was Captain O'Malley, the precinct commander, the man Bumpy had paid off for 20 years to keep the neighborhood safe. The man who was supposed to be Bumpy's eyes and ears in the law. He was there, I whispered. O'Malley was in the room with Genovese. Bumpy nodded slowly. The Italians didn't just buy you, Jules. They bought the law. They outbid me. That's what I needed to know. I needed to know if the shield was gone. And now I know. He picked up the gun part he had been cleaning, the barrel, and inspected it against the light. So it's over, I said, the realization sinking in. You can't fight the families and the police. It's not over, Bumpy said softly. It's just changing. The game is evolving. And the pieces that don't fit, they get removed. He put the gun down and looked at me. A long, searching look that stripped me bare. You did good, Jules. You walked into the fire. You brought me the truth. Does that mean we're square? I asked, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. Does that mean I'm back in? Bumpy laughed. It was a sad, terrible sound. He reached under the table and pulled out a brown paper bag. It looked exactly like the one I had taken from the Italians. He tossed it onto the table. It landed with a heavy, dull thud. Open it. I reached out, my hand shaking again. I opened the bag. Inside, there were stacks of cash. Old bills. Warren, real money. $50,000, Bumpy said. Count if you want. It's all there. I stared at the money. I don't understand. It's yours, Bumpy said. You sold your loyalty for 50 grand. So here it is. I'm paying the price. But I brought the tape. I screamed, the tears finally spilling over. I came back. I didn't run. You came back because you had nowhere else to go. Bumpy roared, slamming his fist onto the table. The glasses rattled. You came back because Pettigrew dragged you back. He stood up, his shadow looming large against the brick wall. Let me tell you a story, Jules. The debt in Jersey? The one you were so scared of? The one you sold me out to pay? I nodded, weeping. I didn't just pay it off 3 weeks ago, Bumpy said, his voice dropping to a whisper. I bought it. I froze. What? I bought the debt note from the bookie. I owned your debt, Jules. You didn't know the Italians. You didn't know Jersey. You owed me. If you had just come to me, if you had just walked into my office and said, Bumpy, I messed up, I would have torn that note up right in front of your face. I would have laughed and poured you a drink. He leaned across the table, his face inches from mine. But you didn't coming to me. You went to them. You tried to solve a debt to your brother by selling his blood to his enemies. And that is something I can't fix. That is a rot that doesn't wash off. I looked at the money. It looked like ashes. He had tested me. He had held the key to my cage the entire time, waiting to see if I would ask for it or would try to break the lock. And I had tried to burn the house down instead. Take the money, Bumpy said, sitting back down. Take it and go. Go where? I whispered. Anywhere but here. You leave Harlem tonight. You go west. You go south. I don't care. But if the sun rises and you're still on this island, Pettigrew will find you. And next time, he won't be driving a truck. I looked at Pettigrew. He was standing by the door, his arms crossed, staring at me with pure disgust. He knew. He had known the whole time. I reached out and grabbed the bag. It felt cold. It felt heavy. I shoved the money into my coat. I'm sorry, Bumpy, I said. Bumpy picked up the pistol again. He didn't look at me. He just started polishing the slide. Goodbye, Julian. He used my full name. That hurt more than a bullet. He had erased Jules. He had erased a friend. All that was left was a stranger named Julian. I turned and walked toward the door. Pettigrew stepped aside to let me pass. As I stepped out into the cold night air, I heard the click of the lock turning behind me. I walked. I walked for hours. I made it to the Port Authority bus terminal just as dawn was breaking. I bought a ticket to Ohio. One way. I sat on the bus, clutching the bag of money to my chest, watching the skyline of New York fade into the gray mist. I had $50,000. I was rich. I was free. But as the bus rolled onto the highway, I realized the truth. Bumpy Johnson was the smartest man I ever knew. He didn't kill me because death was too easy. He let me live. He let me live with the knowledge that I had sold a king for a pocketful of change. He let me live knowing that the debt I feared was already paid, and I had created my own hell. 2 years later, I was working in a diner in Cleveland when I saw the newspaper. Bumpy Johnson dead of heart attack. I went into the back alley and sat on a milk crate. I lit a cigar, the same brand he used to smoke. I sat there and cried until my throat was raw. I still have the money. I never spent a dime of it. I keep it in a safe under my floorboards. Sometimes late at night, I take it out and look at it. It's not money to me. It's a receipt. A receipt for the soul of the man who forgot that loyalty is the only currency that doesn't depreciate. They say Bumpy Johnson died of a heart failure. But I know the truth. His heart didn't fail. It was broken. And I was the one who swung the hammer. The bus driver that morning had asked me where I was going. I told him away. But the truth is, you can never get away. You can run to the end of the earth, but the shadow of the man you betrayed will always be standing right behind you.